I guess there's Wingham Rowan, the founder of Modern Markets for All. Wingham's based in London, but a lot of his focus is on the US, and we're going to explore why. So, Wingham, welcome. Tell us a little bit about what modern market. I'm going to start again because I can.
Okay.
I'm just going to edit it. I'm going to start all over again. So, um, I guess there's Wingham Rowan, the founder of Modern Markets for All. Wingham is based in London, but he's got a tremendous focus on the US. We're going to explore why. Welcome, Wingham, and tell us a little bit, what does Modern Markets for All mean?
Okay, so we came out of a British government program to try and create the best possible connective tissue for people who need to work irregular hours. And that is basically about what's the best possible labor market for people who have medical conditions that fluctuate day to day, people who have complex family caregiving commitments, people who have complex parenting needs, who are studying on an unpredictable schedule, or just people who want control over their work hours. There's a whole cohort out there of people who don't neatly fit into the, oh, I've got 40 hours of availability a week and I want a job. Pigeonhole that so much government effort focuses on. So we came out of, that was our objective, bring all those people into, not only into the legitimate mainstream economy, but give them the best possible opportunities, protections, progressions, stability, pathways to jobs for those who do want that. And that requires very sophisticated technology platform. And we built it progressively with British government funding.
And so the focus for many people is thinking, oh, well, there's all sorts of existing platforms like Uber that match up human talent and a demand. But what you're doing is anchored in a community. Why a community approach? What is it that a community, a local government or a local community has that can actually address some of these challenges that you were talking about?
Well, first of all, Gary, there's nothing odd or surprising about public agencies launching better labor market infrastructure. America's job centers are an alternative to commercial staffing agencies. Every state workforce agency in the US commissions a state job bank, Cal Jobs for California. So they don't do anything for people who are in, quote, gig work. That's odd. That's, what I'm saying is not, oh my God, this is so weird that government should provide an alternative to Uber. It's, well, why not? They provide alternatives for everyone else in the labor market. So briefly, if I want to work in, let's say, Oakland this afternoon for a few hours, the Silicon Valley business model gives me ride-hailing apps, delivery apps, house cleaning apps, dog walking apps, warehousing apps, and so on. But actually, I've got a whole range of skills. I can do gardening, I can operate a switchboard, I can be a cook. I quite like to work with children, but I need some skills to do it. I need an Oakland-centric market for my hours this afternoon that gives me the whole overview, that unlocks all my skills in one place, gives me the actionable data to move to new skills, to decide which of my skills to sell. So I'm not going to, what do I benefit if I'm doing dog walking from Rover being an international platform? I'm not going to go and walk dogs in Tokyo, but I may well do some van driving in Oakland. I just need a horizontal market rather than endless vertical silos, all of which are trying to lock me in, make it very difficult for me to trade in other platforms. So that's why it needs to come from community level, because this kind of work doesn't involve huge travel distances. And I'm not talking about at-home freelancing. I'm not talking about lawyers and translators and web designers and copywriters. They're doing fine. I'm not interested in them. I'm talking about people whose skills equip them to work in shops, in warehouses, in hospitality businesses, on building sites, in care homes, and so on. That's the people you need to look out for. So, and that's community work. You don't travel far to do it.
No, absolutely. So, no, it makes a ton of sense. And for those who haven't visited the Bay Area, Silicon Valley is sort of loosely thought of as being San Francisco and its southern peninsula, but Oakland directly across the bay from us, though it's being rapidly gentrified and taken over by the tech group. It has a much more integrated ecosystem from a history standpoint. And so that's actually a great example of a city that's going through really substantial change. but has a lot of traditional job market activity. And the problem for many communities, not just in the United States, but around the world, is that essentially you've got this untapped capacity. You've got all of these local skills that your citizens have that can be brought to bear on the kinds of problems you were talking about, on civic problems. There's a park that needs to be cleaned up. And so you can think of that as untapped capacity. There's work demand and there's work capacity. And the community has the ability to be able to come together and say, wait a minute, we actually should be solving this. And we can do it with our community's priorities, right?
Totally. So I'm just the plumbing guy in all this. My job is to give this infrastructure, this labor market platform to America, make sure you don't make all the mistakes we did in Britain and get out of the way. You know, we're not trying to create some mega brand. We're a non-profit. We're dedicated to open sourcing everything we do. You sort of need this because if we stick with the Oakland example, there are an awful lot of people in Oakland who will not be able to sell their hours today, who will only be able to sell their hours doing sort of survival work when actually they have far more capability, who won't progress, who won't be connected to a job because the infrastructure isn't there. The labor market they need just doesn't exist. Silicon Valley has no incentive to provide it.
So, and also I think what ends up happening is as markets change, isn't it true that suddenly an Uber is going to say, oh, there's a market there, or a Lyft or a DoorDash. Oh, there's a market. Oh, the market went away. Well, we're not taking responsibility for those people having work. And then the market shifts to another city. Well, that's where they're going to focus, and they're not going to focus anymore on the needs of an Oakland or any other communities. And so the community itself actually has the capacity to continually come together and say, what do we need to do to make sure that our citizens have more access to work?
Yeah, absolutely. Gary, I keep hammering this because people sort of roll their eyes and say, my God, you can't get in the way of Uber. Government already does this all the time. CalJobs is not competing with Indeed.com or Monster.com. It is a job board for all sectors for any employer. But Indeed and Monster will take data from CalJobs. CalJobs is just a public utility designed to grow the California economy, get people the opportunities they need. You just need a flexible work equivalent. And our platform for California is called CalFlexi. And it's just that. So if Uber want to take people from it, if I'm selling my time in Oakland and I'm quite happy to do Uber driving and Uber want me and Uber want to connect to the public platform, they can do so. But I'm going to be exposed to all sorts of other opportunities as well, which Uber might regard as a bit of a risk.
Now you just positioned yourself as a plumber, but you actually are also trying to hack these markets for good. The truth is there's a radical perspective behind what you're talking about, which is that essentially these more business focused, the markets driven by capitalism, actually have this kind of optimization thing that's based around generating a profit. Whereas when it comes to the commitment that more humans will have access to more meaningful, well-paid work, and especially for those humans that you were talking about who have non-standard living situations, they aren't optimized for standard 9 to 5, 5-day-a-week jobs. You actually are trying to, the reason you call it modern markets for all is you actually are trying to generate these markets for all because the community itself is going to have much more people-centric commitments, correct?
Yes, agreed. And I'm not setting myself up as Mr. Anti-Uber. It's not Uber's job to run a healthy labor market. It's Uber's job to maximize return to investors. And to do that, they need to attract buyers before their competition do. And the way you attract buyers is by keeping labor costs low, by having an oversupplied market, so you get a ride fast. But that's not good news for the workers. So we've just come at this hourly labor market thing from a completely different perspective. And you just start way over here with a completely different remit. How do we take the hours of that person in Oakland and treat them as an asset to be developed? Not as a cost to be minimized, but how do we put that person on their personalized pathway and so on? It requires very different technology. It requires the heft of the public sector to launch at scale, but it's doable. It's absolutely doable.
So our time today is short. Just two more questions for you. So one is we've sort of positioned Global Skills Day as envisioning a post-pandemic world, and of course, in many parts of the world, there's just still deep impact of the pandemic. What have you seen has impacted these work markets, and what do you feel hopefully coming out of the pandemic for many communities. What do you feel some of the opportunities potentially created by the pandemic in terms of people's thinking about work differently?
So two things, Gary. The first is there's been an absolute explosion of irregular employment, gig work, if that's what you want to call it, because businesses like restaurants and so on are hiring back incrementally. And a lot of people who lost their jobs are scrabbling for whatever work they can get. And secondly, at the same time, the public sector is getting new demand for community level work. So huge sums are coming from American Rescue Plan Act spending, for instance, for community health workers, street wardens, social distancing ambassadors, business support people, all sorts of roles that may be 9 to 5. These people may be working 40 hours a week. But unless you plan to have them sit in City Hall and wait for citizens to make appointments to see them, they're going to be out in the community, spending a bit of time with the family here, going to see someone who's housebound here. That is flexible work. It's just within a 40-hour protected contract. So all this demand coming into city halls is absolutely a gift if you want to start a citywide market for all kinds of flexible labor. You've just got the demand there. Just channel it through your own platform, which is under your control, and off it goes, and open that platform to the local economy more widely.
That's brilliant. So last question. So I give you a magic wand and you get to wave it and have the world that Wingham Rowan wants in 5 years, 10 years. What does that world look like? What do you believe needs to be most dramatically changed?
You need to shift the huge might of the public employment agencies away from just focusing on 20th century job creation. They need to shift to what we call full spectrum employment support. So if you've got 40 hours of availability for work a week, great, let's get you the best possible job. That's what they do now, and they do it pretty well. But if your life is more complex, if you're going through a bad patch, you're waking up each day and you don't know if your back pain will go away in time for you to go to work, we want to be there for you as well. If you want extra skills, but you can't give up your full-time job, we want to be there to get you a few hours of that. So it's this vision of public employment agencies, the public workforce system, moving to this much more fluid world of employment. They won't do that without infrastructure. They won't do it without using the heft that they have to launch better infrastructure for this part of the labor market.
Now, it sounds like a tremendous opportunity for communities to actually move into the 21st century. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, well, best of luck at catalyzing that. I think what you're doing with Modern Markets for All is just tremendous. And we're talking about this whole process of trying to unlock skills in what we hope is the brave new world of the post-pandemic era. That actually this will be one of the tools in the tool belt that many communities will adopt. So, Wingham, thank you so much for your time. Take care.